Greetings, everyone. This is CM Kozaman again, and we are back with TK Sivgin for what will hopefully become a regular series of interviews about basically life in other worlds, the history of science, and speculative evolution, speculative zoology, and I guess anything interesting that we can wrap our minds around. So I hope you're having a good day. And last week, TK and I spoke about, well, a lot of things, but we got to the point at which we were discussing Kepler's, what could arguably be the world's first speculative evolution project with none other than Johannes Kepler, the great mathematician and astronomist. And he had a book called Somnium about a dream of a trip to the moon. And in Kepler's work, the moon is inhabited by a variety of strange creatures and strange, dare I say, proto-ecologies. So in our last episode, TK Sivgin and I spoke mostly about TK's Rinia project, which is the evolution of life in a space station with different biomes. I mean, go check out the video the link is in the video description. So we did not have much time to discuss Somnium and other details. Of course, being ourselves, we ventured into a lot of fun and entertaining tangents, but that's the best thing about podcasting interviews in general. So today we're gonna properly tackle Kepler's Somnium. So right on to you, TK. What do you think?
Well, last time we at least discussed much of the background that Kepler was writing in. Like you already had, of course, the Copernican revolution, where people realized, oh, the Earth is like the other planets. And then, of course, then you could argue, wait, if the Earth is like other planets, are the other planets also like Earth? And you already had people like Giordano Bruno, who possibly were like the first man in like Renaissance era Europe who speculated about life on other planets. And reading Bruno's text, he is very prophetic in a lot of ways. Like not only does he speculate about how humans might in the future visit other planets, and like he says, the most likely technology will be some kind of vehicle. So he kind of like already predicts like rockets and stuff.
He actually predicted rockets.
Well, not. He says like he outlines various methods by which a human could go to another planet, astral projection, the force of imagination, or like being. I believe he also discusses being transported there by angels or other beings, which is of course relevant later.
Was this the book where they jokingly said the morning dew could help us reach the sun? So there was one researcher, I don't know if it was this particular guy you're talking about, but maybe it's someone else contemporaneous. But there was a crazy idea about this guy basically waking up very early every morning and collecting the dew from leaves, when, especially in Europe and North America, in the mornings, there's a mist. So it collects as little droplets, even if there's no rain or whatever. So this guy had the internally consistent logic that the dew landed from the moon at night because the sun wasn't around. And then when the sun came up, it was somehow elementally drawn to space. So it didn't evaporate. It actually flew up in little molecules. So what this guy proposed was collecting all the little bits of sun dew with little water syringe or something, collecting them in little bottles, attaching them to his shirt, and then flying basically. But I don't know if these are the same people we're talking about.
No, like Bruno had a lot of like esoteric ideas, but I don't think he proposed it. Like he said, like the most likely method by which a human in the future could go to another planet is through some special vehicle, like an airship. And there were later novels that actually picked up on this idea because, it was thought like space was not a vacuum, but was like filled with ether. So like a lighter than air gas. So if you could make like a vacuum device for like an airship, where like instead of a balloon you have like a cylinder made which has just a vacuum inside, you could like float into the air with that, and then through the ether, and then travel all the way to other planets like that. So those were like ideas around space travel. But yeah, what I meant is that Bruno was prophetic in the idea that technological progress will get us one day to other planets.
Yeah, so not a natural phenomenon, like you just don't get caught in a tornado, but you actually make a vehicle.
Yeah, that's like the first time someone speculates about technological space travel instead of like these like fantastic myths. And Bruno is also interesting because he also basically like he kind of predicts like this debate of like convergence versus contingency, because he like outright argues that life on other planets does not have to look like life on Earth, because he sees like the direct argument he uses is like humans use blood vessels to transport water and trees use tracheas and stuff. So if even on Earth life forms find two different solutions for the same problem, why not also on other planets?
I think that's way ahead of his time. I think
really, like
even more than the spaceships.
Yeah.
Also, like in this day, we take the idea of a vehicle so much for granted. But of course, now that you describe it this way, it makes sense that like the most basic concepts took the longest time for people to dream up.
Yeah, the best, like the most advanced vehicles of his times would have been like those like transatlantic wooden ships.
I guess they were banking on finding the wood for the sea, that is the ether. So maybe, as you said, it was vacuum or, I don't know, moonstones or whatever.
Yeah.
So moving on to Somnium. So how did this relate to Bruno's work?
Well, not directly. Like this is like more setting the background in which Kepler writes in. Like Kepler mostly bases his work off that of Galileo, actually. And like Galileo also comments on Kepler's work and stuff, and they like supported each other. And Kepler also, he was the student of Tycho Brahe, which will get important later.
I mean, going on to Somnium, I tried to read it, but I guess there's no way to properly read it. I can't understand the Latin it was written in.
Yeah, I have a German translation, if that's helpful, right here with me.
Yeah.
So like, let me just say, go into the history of this book. Like he attempted to write it in 1608 as, I believe, like a master's thesis, which is pretty awesome to think about. For your master's thesis, you write a novel.
Yeah, that's back in the good old days when academy wasn't as rigorous.
Yeah, basically in 1608 he attempted to write this, and like he gave like his friends like early like drafts of this, and this actually got him into trouble because like the story begins with Kepler. Like he writes from an ego perspective. So I was like sitting on my table, I was reading a book about the Bohemian history, and then I fell asleep. And then in my dream, I was myself again going through a market. And on the market, I saw an ancient book written by someone named Duracotus. Then he tells the story from Duracotus' perspective. So there's like many layers on this.
Several layers of immersion.
Yeah, exactly. And Duracotus is a man from Thule, which is a name from Greek mythology that Kepler identifies with Iceland, which at this time was like a very mysterious country. And there were like all sorts of stories of like witches and demons living on Iceland. And Duracotus tells about his childhood, like his father was like 150 years old, but he died before he got to know him. And his mother, sorry. And his mother,
sorry.
I guess you talk.
There's a bit of lag, so sorry to our listeners as well. I guess maybe this was a plot device designed to shield himself from, I don't know if heresy was a big deal back then, but certainly the Catholic Protestant conflict was raging.
Exactly what I'm getting at, because Duracotus' mother was like a herbalist, like kind of alchemist kind of woman. Like she uses like herbs to make like healing potions and stuff. And because this book has many like autobiographic elements, and when Kepler gave out these drafts, it actually got him and his family into trouble because Kepler's mother was accused of being a witch.
Oh my.
Yeah, and they had to go through like many like trials and stuff. Like ultimately, she was proven
Acquitted.
to not be guilty, so she got to survive this inquisition. But it left like a big like damage on Kepler and his family, and
it scarred them for life.
Yeah, and this is why like probably like 90% of this book is like explanatory notes where Kepler says, "I meant this and that by this," and you know, so like to create any plausible deniability. And it's also why this book was never actually published during Kepler's lifetime. Like he died 1643, I believe, and this book was published. No, wait, I think 1630, and the book was published 1634 by his son. So it was only published posthumously, much like Copernicus' work. Probably because Kepler himself was scared that he would get into further trouble if he was actually publishing this.
And in the book, which Kepler said he discovered in a bazaar and was written by this mysterious Icelander, the moon was called Levania, right? I mean, when I was doing my lunchtime of research, trying to probe into the mysteries of this work, I first thought maybe Somnium was the name he had given to the moon, but no, it was actually like,
it's like the name of the story, like it means sleep or dream.
Yeah, it means sleep or dream. Yeah, exactly. So I had to like go through those layers myself. Of course, not understanding the language properly didn't help. But the moon itself is called Levania.
Yeah, there is an interesting reason for that. Like he says he could have given it like the Greek name of the moon or any other language, but he chose the Hebrew name because it simply sounded more mysterious.
Ah.
Yeah, I think like he adapted it from like Lebania or something with a B. I would have to look for that note again. Like,
yeah, I'm also checking like what the moon means in Hebrew. So just give me a second here as well. But certainly, I mean, maybe he was trying to probe the very depths of biblical language, like the original Old Testament language. But
that could be it. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. But we haven't gotten to that part yet, because I'm trying to like reconstruct the whole story to you. So basically, he reads this book by Duracotus, and now we have like who tells first about his childhood on Iceland and about his mother. And like one day, his mother like she like sells bags of like these herbs. And one day, young Duracotus, when he was just 4 years old, accidentally opens one of his packets to look inside. And his mother gets so angry at that she takes him, brings him to the port, and sells him to like some ship crew.
Ah.
Yeah, and so he lives on a ship away from his mother, and the ship like sails all the way to Denmark, where Duracotus is discovered by Tycho Brahe, who was also the teacher of Kepler in real life. So you already see like these autobiographical elements coming in.
His OC persona, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like again, like to like create all like these layers of plausible deniability, but then still be about him in a way. And then like from Tycho Brahe, Kepler learns all sorts of, and Duracotus. See, even I'm making the mistake. Even I'm mixing them up. So
we know who's who. We know who's who.
Yeah.
So
Duracotus learns all sorts of astronomy, and then like he sails back to Iceland where he meets with his mother again. And his mother is like sorry that she did sell him off. And then he tells her, oh, I learned all sorts of astronomy. And then his mother is like, oh, nice, you learned the same thing as I did, but with different methods. Because I also know a lot about the stars, but not through like telescopes or something, but because I talk with demons who can travel all the way there. And I can show you how to do that. Yeah, it is important to note that when Kepler writes about demons, he like means the old Greek word daimon, which
So
is
not
less of
something.
not like this like Christian idea of a demon, like this evil creature from hell, but more like something akin to a muse.
Like an elemental creature, basically, or
No, like a personification of ideas and
okay,
the
okay.
sciences. Basically, like apparently, like Durakotu's mother, like directly talks with the demon of astronomy, who knows all about astronomy, gives like people ideas about it.
I think this also like kind of has connections to the whole idea, especially it's prevalent in Islamic legends about how jinns can impart you wisdom or something like that.
Yeah.
But certainly something to note. It's also interesting to notice that there's a bit of Freudian like mother and offspring rivalry going on there.
Yeah.
It's like
that is also true. Yeah. So basically, yeah, she tells him about this, and then she tells me, look, we can talk with him. And then so they go into like some like opening in the forest, and they put like towels around their heads to like focus their vision. And then they like call this demon, and then the narration switches again to like this demon just telling us about how people can travel to the moon and how it actually is on the moon.
Oh, so how do they travel? Like, is this ever revealed?
Yeah, it's actually told in detail. Like first, the demons, like the demons are the ones who help humans go to the moon, but they only do it with a select few of people, like ones that are used to long ship voyages, but also like I believe he says like directly like old women that ride on broomsticks, so witches without calling them by their name, which is probably what got Kepler into trouble.
Yeah.
And basically the way they transport a human to the moon is first you're given an anesthesia because of the motions that you have to go through, like would destroy your body if you were like very stiff. So you have to be basically asleep. Yeah, and then like 16 demons or so like go underneath your body, and then they just push you up into the sky all the way to the moon.
Oh,
under like intense speeds and like with very little air. So like you have to put like a wet cloth in front of your mouth to be even able to breathe.
This is very interesting, and I would like to like open a side section here.
Yeah.
Because some of these things that you described through Kepler and his OC persona and his OC persona's mother issues, they're very similar to a tradition which was believed in basically the Highlands of Scotland, and basically northern British Isles in general. And they have something called the second sight, in which like you do something like very similar. You have to be from a chosen line, but it helps to be from a chosen line. But basically anyone from this particular province or the highlands is said to be able to do this. And what they do is like it's similar to that wrapping towels around you kind of thing. I mean, I read the books, and like there was something about basically you close your eyes and climb onto the knee of someone who's facing the opposite distance from you. And then there are also things like walking around at night with like a towel over your head, basically in a forest or something. And through this means, you don't get to travel to the moon, but you get something called the second sight, which is the ability to see the future, the ability to get in touch with paranormal beings, and in rare cases, the ability to transliterate from location to location. So, I mean, I guess that was like a common North Sea, or I guess Nordic kind of folk magic.
Indeed.
Which
I remember reading some like secondary literature which does propose that Kepler was basing his ideas off like myths like that.
I mean, it's very, very possible. And I'm certainly there are people among our listeners who know more about Scottish legends of second sight and transliteration. I mean, I remember the way I got into this whole second sight and Scotland thing was I was reading a biography of a British lady from the 1990s. And she was like basically a member of the Scottish aristocracy. And she was saying, yeah, things like this used to exist. People just don't know now. I mean, she was a bit tongue in cheek, of course. But then I got into I studied the sources she mentioned, and a lot has been written about this. And like, if any of our listeners want to find out more, go and search for Second Sight and Scotland. So a version of space travel before there was space travel.
Yeah. For some reason, I've been wondering if there is also like a method by which you can like see through water and then look into the like Loch Ness.
And
the
then rendering
see, is there something in there really?
Maybe. I mean, okay, this is another whole weird tangent, but there's tales of folk magic in Turkey that supposedly allow people, or they are helping jinns to see through the bottom of a lake or the sea in order to find sunken treasure. And I guess this was a more practical use for the ability to see through water. But in our current day and age, there's something very interesting and romantic about this. And it's like being in a computer game where you can toggle
Activate
different
cheats.
layers. Or cheats, or like toggle different layers on and off. So the water layer is rendered transparent. And I'm sure there's at least one person out there who's been reading a lot about second sight or spirit beings or folk magic or something, and then basically made the Matrix reference. That is to say, we live in a extremely advanced digital simulation, and the Damians or the demons or the jinns, they are basically just like editors or moderators. And if you ask them nicely,
or worse, computer viruses.
Oh, yes. If you ask them nicely, they can show you where the loot is.
The simulation field, that's like a whole other like rabbit hole.
Yeah, we can probably do another 2 episodes about this whole simulation thing.
Oh, God.
But I guess we're going to be recording new episodes every 2 weeks or something. So I really look forward to discussing more.
Yeah, I have a lot of other weird stuff I've been thinking about, and which I would like to talk with you. Like I've been listening to the audiobook of Communion by Whitley Strieber, for example. Lately.
Oh, I have the actual book, and I actually have its sequels too. I discovered
is
them
with
in
the creepy cover of the alien.
Yes, it is. It is with the like extremely unsettling cover.
Yeah,
and then Communion has a sequel too. It's called it's very silly of me, but I have to go up and look at it. 1 second.
That's fine.
It's called Transformation. So there's another book that's the follow-up to Communion by Whitley Strieber. It's called Transformation. And there's even a third book in which he basically wrote a fiction about his original account with Communion. He basically did something just like Kepler did. But because it was fiction, I didn't want to get it. But I had the first 2 books, and I'm just waiting for a time.
Did he not also write the script for the movie himself?
I guess he did, but that movie is so scary. I have never been able to bring myself to watch it. Like
the first time you see the alien like look through the door, that is very scary. But honestly, like later on, it becomes kind of funny, like not in a good way. Like this scene where Christopher Walken, like he walks into this spaceship, and then he sees like this little blue man, and then he just like dances with them. That is so hilarious. I love that moment so much because it's kind of wholesome.
Well, I need to look into it. I mean, there's a couple of movies like that. There's Communion, there's Fire in the Sky.
Oh.
And then there was a psychological horror movie made in the same era. I just don't remember the name now, but for like
is it the one with the
deep
owl?
unsettling. It's the one with basically a man returns from Vietnam. He's stricken with Vietnam syndrome, but it then turns out that it's not about Vietnam at all. And
Jacob's
there's
Ladder.
Jacob's Ladder. Yeah, that
That's
one.
the
Oh
one.
my God. That Jacob's Ladder, that movie, like, you need to hold a gun, you need to hold me for ransom because it's so scary. I mean, those movies, Jacob's Ladder, and then also, well, maybe Communion is an easy one, but also Fire in the Sky, the one about the Travis
Yeah.
Walton abduction case. These movies also have some of the best uses of practical special effects.
Like the aliens in Fire in the Sky, they still look so real. Like,
Unbelievable.
it's amazing how they did that. Like, that's the one practical effect where the eyes look the most real in any movie I've ever watched.
Unbelievable. Just then, of course, CGI came along and kind of spoiled the whole party.
Yeah, right.
But these movies, I cannot. Jacob's Ladder, Fire in the Sky, and Communion, I can't watch for the life of me. Also, to this list, I must add the original Event Horizon, which is just so gory and so scary. It's just, anyways.
With Sam Neill, right?
Yeah.
I almost wanted to say Alan Grant, but that's the role he played in Jurassic Park.
Yeah. I mean, he's become associated very closely with Alan Grant and with Alan Grant in outer space. And some people say that some people are so into Warhammer that they want to believe that Event Horizon was the first Warhammer movie. Because let's give a little context for our listeners. In Warhammer, in order to travel from planet to, like, between interstellar space, you need to go through hyperspace, but hyperspace is literally the hell, full of demons and the spirits of the dead. So in Event Horizon, there's a experimental faster than light spaceship. It returns from a voyage quite unexpectedly, bringing along its cargo of demons and hallucinations, and it's just horrible, extremely scary. And there are some people who are like extremely, like, they look at the decorations and say, well, this is the way design is gonna move on forward. And then they look at, like, in Event Horizon, there's like somebody's watching the news or something, and they say, this news foretells the coming of the Emperor of Man or something like that. It's like JFK assassination levels of like trying to squeeze out details from information.
I have to say, amazing. Though, like the design of the spaceship in Event Horizon, it has like this kind of Gothic style, which does sort of fit with 40K.
Yeah, it does. You could see that evolving into some of the 40K spaceships and God, I don't know.
I've been reading a lot of Warhammer lore recently, but more about Warhammer fantasy battles rather than 40K.
Well, this is one of my pet hobbies too. I think most people on the internet, I just listen to those Warhammer channels in the background, and mostly I listen to about my favorite races, which are the Tyranids and also the Necrons, the green pharaonic looking zombie guys.
Yeah.
And there's just something about, like, listening, like, I probably will never get to play Warhammer. The closest I've been to a local Warhammer shop was to buy these very fine brushes because I want to paint my like artwork and watercolors and stuff like that. It's a pro tip, by the way. If you go to a Warhammer shop, you can find high quality art brushes for cheaper prices than you would at an art store. At least that's the way things roll in my part of the world, but maybe yours too.
I do have miniatures actually, but let me show them.
Oh, sure. Dear listeners, if you're also into Warhammer, write in the comments and name me your favorite creature or your favorite faction. In CM Cosm and Verse, there's only one faction, and these are the Tyranids. But let's see TK's collection.
Here, it's a skink. Yeah, I'm more of a Warhammer fantasy guy rather than 40K.
So this is like the side fantasy line. That's
it used to be not the main line.
Really, I didn't know that.
Like there was first Warhammer Fantasy Battles, which was like playing in this kind of Dungeons and Dragons as fantasy world. And then 40K originally started out as imagining what that world would be like 40,000 years in the future, which is why you have like the same races, why you have like elves and orcs and humans in space and stuff. But then it kind of like diverged into like separate universes. And now the only thing that really connects them is that it's the same races, and the chaos gods are also the same. Like you have Nurgle, Slaanesh, Khorne, Tzeentch, all in like fantasy and also 40K, and there's some implication that the universes are connected through the chaos warp. Look, yeah, that was a skin I showed you. Look at Bastiladon, which is like an ankylosaur kind of creature.
This is cool. This is so cool.
Yeah, the lizardmen are like one of my favorite factions. It's like Aztec dinosaur people riding larger dinosaurs.
Well, I just didn't know about this, but it's certainly a relief to see these dinosaur creatures and not some beefed up guy with a helmet and armor. Yeah, it's a real relief.
That's the cool thing about Warhammer Fantasy. Like that like universe officially ended, I believe, in 2012 or something, because they wrote a novel series called The End Times that officially like showed how the whole world in that universe like was destroyed by the chaos gods and then like reborn into Age of Sigmar. But then there's this video game studio, Creative Assembly, who makes like the Total War games.
Yeah.
And they made Total War Warhammer based on the 8th edition of Warhammer Fantasy, and it became so popular again that it like resurrected the whole franchise so much that Games Workshop is now working on Warhammer the Old World to bring back Warhammer Fantasy. And
yeah, I mean, you're obviously far more adept at Warhammer lore, but did you also play with the games? Did you have your own army?
No.
And matches and everything?
I have a few miniatures, but I have never like actually played with them. I bought them because they look cool.
Well, this is so cool though. It looks like a Glyptodon type ankylosaur as well.
Yeah, it has like a solar stone on its back which like shoots lasers. Because there's a lizardman in this, so like the Warhammer planet was like created by aliens called the Old Ones, who have like this magical technology that makes them godlike, basically. And like first they created the lizardmen as like their direct servants, and then they created the younger races like humanity, elves, and dwarves and stuff. And then they had like warp gates at the north and south poles, which one day just collapsed and like opened like portals into the chaos warp. And so like demons drifted out and stuff. And the old ones like completely died out, and the elves and the lizardmen worked together to like not close the portals but make them weaker. And since then, like the Warhammer world has been like gradually like degenerating into more and more chaotic factions.
Just goes to show what a virgin normie I am in Warhammer lore. I mean, you certainly know more. I mean, my primary exposure to this thing is from YouTube, basically. And I have a friend who's like super into their lore and games as well. But obviously, I didn't know about the Lizardman. Now, my unfettered love for the Tyrannid race might be challenged.
They are kind of similar because the lizardmen also have like this caste system where like the highest ones are Slan, which are these like giant toad people that are like so fat but also so like telepathically powerful that they never walk. Instead, they like sit on floating chairs, and they can like do this with a snip of a thing and destroy like a whole army of demons with their mind. Super based. Then there is like Saurus, who are like basically dinosaur people who are like the main warriors, and then there's skinks like this who are like smaller lizard people.
Really nice, man.
Yeah, there's also chameleon skinks who are really cool. And then there's like crop spores.
They are ranged units, I guess.
Yeah, there's ranged units, there's infantry normal, they even have like a terror bird cavalry in some lore.
Oh, nice.
Like skinks riding terror birds called Kulchan. Yeah, and then there's also Cropsigors, who are like giant crocodile people that just like punch, like they could take probably like a space marine and just punch them to death with one.
Well, they took that concept from the Donkey Kong Super Nintendo games.
Oh yeah, like the Kremlins.
There was a whole race of crocodile muscle.
Yeah, I love Donkey Kong
Interconnected
Country.
universes. Those games were so
Yeah.
good. They're
Have you
like
played the new
best.
ones?
I've played the first two ones on the Nintendo
Yeah.
Super Nintendo
Yeah.
system,
I
and
played
the game design of
yeah, like
the level. Sorry.
Yeah, if you can, like, you should play like the new ones, Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze, because it's like those old games, but like times 100.
Oh my. Well, another one in the long list of computer games that I have to play.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's getting back on track
Kepler.
to Kepler and Somnium.
Yeah.
And this is why I love these interviews, that we take all these side avenues.
Yeah.
And
It's more of a
the
podcast
best
than an
thing
interview when
about
you think about it.
yep. Now it's officially become a podcast because we're recording episode 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so he is like phase shifted basically, or no clipped, for the lack of a better word.
Yeah.
No clipped onto the moon, and then what happens?
Then the demon just like goes into like a very, very long like narration about what are the conditions on the moon, like astronomically speaking, which is actually the majority of the story. Like, how would it be for a human to stand on the moon? Like, how would he see the Earth? How would he see the other stars? How long would the day be? And that's where like the real science gets into, because like the main point of this novel is to show that for someone standing on the moon, it would appear that everything else is revolving around the moon. And like basically Kepler was trying to make a point for like Copernicanism, like it's all a matter of perspective, what is actually the center of the universe.
Yep.
Yeah. And so like Kepler notes a few interesting things about what life would be like on the moon, like climatically speaking, because you know, like how long is a month? About 30 days. What are months modeled after? The cycles of the moon. So what is a day on Earth lasts 30 Earth days on the moon. So like you need 30 Earth days for the sun to be at the same spot it started again. So you on one side of the moon you have about 15 days of daytime and 15 days of nighttime, which of course creates a really extreme climate. Imagine
certainly.
Imagine being in a desert where the sun never sets for 15 days.
Then there must be a lot of erosion too, because the water would keep freezing and expanding. So it would be like, I don't know, very smooth, I guess. I mean, considering there was an atmosphere and all that. I mean, that's why when I made that drawing of Levania, I drew very high mountains, but implying there was like less gravity, but also a lot of erosion going on too. But I don't know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but he also goes a bit into that actually. Like he notes that like the water like follows like the nighttime side around the planet. So there's like the moon's own versions of tides. Where like these massive, like, so during the daytime there's like what is once desert, during the nighttime becomes like flooded with water and then freezes over. So you go from a desert to like the Antarctic basically in the span of 1 month.
I guess because of that, the moon creatures, which in this book are called Levanians, they're either like extremely long-legged or flyers, or they build ships or something.
But I have made notes about what Kepler says about moon life. Basically, so Kepler like makes
no problem.
Here I found it. So basically, Kepler first notes that there is actually a difference between the far side and the near side of the moon, depending on regarding the severeness of the climate.
It's also amazing he gets that right in that time.
Yeah, like the let's call it seasons on the far side are actually way more extreme than on the near side, because the near side, when the near side goes through its night time, it does still receive some light that is being reflected from Earth.
Yep.
And the far side does not receive that. And also the far side during its nighttime is farther away from the sun than the near side is during its nighttime. So basically, the seasons are far more pronounced on the far side, which is, I believe, why Kepler notes that it is basically a wasteland with like no settlements and all, while the near side is where you would find like farms and fields and cities.
I mean, at least comparatively more inhabitable.
Yeah.
Or there could be tunnel people.
Yeah, he notes that most of the life forms on Mars like live, not Mars, on the moon live underground in like deep caverns, and they have like elaborate piping systems to bring like water from the surface into the caves to like cool them down.
You could also derive power from that. I mean, big turbines underground to power the cities. And like another parenthesis here, that have you been watching this very nice, surprisingly good Apple TV show for all mankind?
I have heard of it, but I have not watched it.
I mean, I would strongly recommend it to you and all our viewers. Basically, it's an alternative history of the space race, in which the Soviets get to the moon first, and then the US pours all the money it would have poured to the Vietnam War into an extreme space race. And then there's a moon base, but it's like basically the size of a telephone booth or like a little room. And then there's conflict, and then there's expansion, and the characters are all very well drawn. I mean, very nice and progressive without being like too much finger in our eyes about it. I really like that show and really recommend it to all our viewers.
Have you watched the movie Apollo 18?
No, I haven't watched that one.
Like Apollo 18 is one of the Apollo missions that was canceled in real life. But this movie is about like, what if it was secretly but if they secretly did carry it out? So it's about like two astronauts on Apollo 18 who go to the lunar South Pole. And there they discover, the Soviets did actually send a manned mission to the moon, but something killed the cosmonaut. Oh,
and there's like, a mystery.
Yeah, like should I reveal what the plot twist is?
Please do.
Like all the rocks you see on the moon, they are not rocks. It's like crab, like aliens that like disguise as rocks. So like when you
so good.
So they walk across, so there's this like really creepy scene where like only in dim lighting you see suddenly all these rocks come to like legs splay out of the rocks and like so
crab people on the moon, I guess.
Well, it's just crabs, not people. Like they have gone full carcinization. Not even the moon can escape.
It reminded me of this. It reminded me of this really nice scene in the Peter Jackson King Kong. What was it, 2005?
2005, yeah.
And they fall into these like deep canyon, and there's all sorts of giant insects and monsters, and I love that scene. I mean, it's
one of my the book, by the way, the art book.
So do I. Skull Island, the fauna of Skull Island. It was one of my like formative speculative evolution moments.
Yeah, I love that book. I love the whole universe they created for that movie. Especially I played the video game a lot. Actually, it's like usually like these licensed games are like very shitty and because they're like cash grabs. But for that game, they actually put effort in it, and they made it into a pretty good like survival horror game where you play Jack and you're like alone in the jungle, and you have like a gun but with very low ammunition. Instead, you have most things like spears, and you get attacked by dinosaurs that are like 2 times your size.
Well, they really missed a big opportunity by not making a zoo simulator with all Skull Island creatures. Imagine that.
There is a mod for that for Jurassic World Evolution, which is like building. Someone made a mod where it swaps out the skins of T-Rex for like V-Rex and stuff, so you can have all these creatures in your park.
I imagine you could have also all the insects and the giant spiders. And all the like land crabs and giant leeches. They even had this like really plausible order of centipedes that evolved to mimic scorpions.
Yeah,
that was just unbelievable.
I think.
Yeah.
Those were like they they were originally supposed to be in the movie, but the scene got cut, but they did reappear again in the video game as like a common enemy. That's the fun part.
And man, the Phoitodon, the scavenger crocodile.
Oh yeah, that one was. I had that one as a toy actually, I believe,
Oh,
but I never found it again.
Ah, lucky you. Damn. I mean, I guess the toys were quite good quality too. But
Yeah.
anyways, I mean, Weta Workshop, if you're listening to this amazing podcast, please consider make us a zoo game for Skull Island. I would play it to no end. Anyways, so back to the moon, back to Kepler.
Oh, wait! I want to linger on this a little bit. There's
sure.
So many good franchises where you could make zoo games. Like imagine Darwin 4 as a zoo game.
Ah, man. And then imagine the mods people would make of those games.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Generally, I kind of want a game like that where it's just like an alien zoo simulator. Like you're on a spaceship, like on a space station, and you have to build a zoo for like alien tourists with like all sorts of very like wacky and imaginative creatures. There was a game similar to this one called Startopia, but you didn't build a zoo, but more like a city, on a space station for like various species of aliens, and had to like meet all their needs and stuff. It was pretty fun.
I had this idea for a one-to-one scaled exotic reptile and amphibian simulation because, if you ever kept exotic reptiles or if you ever seen them in a zoo, they're actually like, they don't move around much. Basically, like if you have like a pet exotic poison arrow frog, just sits at a corner and the only movement you can see it's actually is gular sac moving up and down. And once in a while it hops around or eats something. So the idea was to make a one-to-one scale. So this would actually like configure your monitor and it would be that size, a one-to-one scale, 4K high definition terrarium simulator in which you have these like your screen would basically turn into this exotic terrarium. And then you could have anything you want, like, a coral snake or a king cobra or like one of those extremely rare Australian geckos or even some of those extinct lizards from the Pacific Islands. You could just keep them and it would like be extremely graphic and intensive. So like would be very realistic.
Yeah, Planet Zoo is kind of similar. Like it's like basically a modern remake of Zoo Tycoon, but you can also have like these smaller terrarium creatures and they're like fully animated and you can just like watch their life cycles and stuff, but it's probably not as detailed as your idea.
Neat. I mean, the whole trick in my idea was that you never get to move around the screen. You just see the screen, but it's very well rendered, all the plants and stuff, and you can drop in a cricket or I don't know, throw in a frozen mouse or something. Full realism.
You remind me of this. There is this old Dreamcast game called Seaman, narrated by Leonard Nimoy of all people. Like it's a very like bizarre game where you were raising a fish with a human face and you could talk to it with like a microphone.
Those games. Yes, it was basically a test vehicle for the Dreamcast microphone, but exactly. I remember.
Yeah. And like the thing would go through like a life cycle. First it starts out as a fish, then it like develops legs and gills and stuff, and then it becomes like a frog man.
Funnily enough, I mean, that whole fish with a man's face, the bizarre digital animation trick, they showcased it. I don't know if it's related to the game, but they showcased it in this Monty Python film about the Monty Python and the meaning of life.
Yeah, I know which scene you mean.
And there's this whole scene where there's these like three Monty Python face fish come together and say hello to each other in the most British way imaginable. But I always wondered, because even like Monty Python films are a bit like surrealistic and out there, but even that scene kind of stood out and wasn't extremely funny. So I always wondered if like the producers had these friends who were making these like digital renders and they just, hey, can we make a segment with this? And they said, okay, why not?
I mean, the whole movie was kind of surreal and random. Like, do you remember the one scene like where they're just like, where did the fish go? And then he's like doing like his weird arm movements. Where did the fish go?
Yeah. I think it was, to be honest, the weakest of the Monty Python films.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because they were kind of like riding the shockwave of their own success.
Yeah.
I think the Life of Brian was really nice, and the original episodes are nice.
Yeah. Also the what was it? Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Holy Grail, that's the best
Yeah.
one.
And it has a different title in German. That's why I have to think. Like in German, it's called the Knights of the Coconut.
I guess it was a marketing decision because maybe Monty Python wasn't as popular in Germany. No, actually, or was it?
Actually, like, yeah, I remember like Monty Python was at one point so popular in Germany that they made like 2 special episodes in German, like where the Python crew themselves tried to speak only in German, but which had a whole other layer of like comedy because they couldn't actually speak German, so it sounded like very bizarre.
Was there a German or Swiss equivalent to evolve their own Monty Python basically with a similar sense of humor?
Not like when I was young, there was the Bully Parade by Michael Bully Herbig and like his friends, and they were also like very successful and kind of funny. Then they tried making movies which like successively became worse, and then I don't know. But yeah, they were funny for a time.
Well, I'm really lucky in that respect because where I'm from, Monty Python was practically unknown until the mid 2000s when internet made it popular. But my father, having spent some time youth, used to buy these like VHS tapes of Monty Python and also the Faulty Towers series with John Cleese and all that. So, I mean, they were a formative experience. And I remember like, there's even this like holy grail, pun intended, of all Monty Python products. Basically, you got this enormous branded suitcase containing all episodes on VHS tape in 144p glory. And it cost something like £800 or £600. And I mean, it was impossible to buy, but like
in a few years, it will be impossible to watch because nobody will have VCRs anymore.
Yeah, so like I couldn't buy it either. I mean, all we had was like a few pirate tapes and a few official tapes, and then the videotapes of like 2 tapes for Faulty Towers, and then Life of Brian, Holy Grail, and the other one, The Meaning of Life. And that was it. But it was like a whole weird experience. And now, of course, everything is on YouTube. How the times have changed.
Yeah. I think there are also Netflix now, at least some of the movies.
I guess, but in my part of the world, you just pirate that stuff.
Yeah, of course.
There's places to watch them all over the place. Not a recommendation.
So let's go back. Like we derailed too much, probably. So the demon talks about all these like conditions on the moon, and then like in like the last few pages of the work, like they talk about what the actual life forms are like, and like you already said, many have like long legs or wings and like lead a nomadic lifestyle to like chase like the habitable zone basically. Then there's also ones which build ships. Yeah, and others simply live underground, and there is some sense that there's also like permanent settlements on the near side because the conditions there are better, probably with like irrigation systems and stuff.
I mean, when illustrating these Levanians, these moon creatures, I from what I was able to read of the text, I had the assumption that there were maybe polymorphic creatures. So it was like one race with multiple shapes, or is it multiple species? I don't know.
That is, I mean, you could perhaps interpret that, but I never got that from the text. Like it's more like, like it basically like some Lunarians are like this, some are like that. I guess depending on the word, how you interpret the wording, it could be a polymorphic, but I always interpret it as like different species and races. Yeah, sometimes I believe he's also simply talking about like animals instead of like intelligent beings. Like for example,
Yeah, that was
the ones
also
with
very
the long,
unclear to me.
yeah, the ones with the long legs and the wings could simply be like animals and stuff. Yeah.
I mean, that also seemed a bit unclear to me about if there are any of those which build boats, unless they're like those memory people in Man After Man, which instinctively build boats, which is also a possibility. Some of them must be like at least human level intelligent, or like as as advanced a civilization as the Polynesians were on Earth.
Yeah. At one point, I believe, like Kepler also says that at least some of the craters on the moon are actually constructs made by like gigantically sized lunarians.
Ooh, okay, I missed that one.
Yeah, like Jules Verne even makes fun of the concept in his own like moon travel story.
But actually, it's kind of ahead of its time. I mean, the whole idea of a moon race, and even like somehow distantly related to the idea of Martian canals.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's actually, yeah. That's the funny thing. Like the Martian canals were originally interpreted as natural waterways, similar to how like the lunar maria were interpreted as like actual seas. And then like Kepler went a bit further and said maybe these are like artificial structures, which does parallel what Lowell did with Schiaparelli's canals. Yeah.
I wonder if there were any big lived, and if there were any, it could have given him the idea to like basically mention the canal, mention the theater as such. But I don't know.
Yeah.
My internet connection might be a bit weird, by the way. So
yeah, I did not hear the first part of the sentence.
I mean, I was saying if there were any, I was asking if there were any, because in Europe they had some canals or irrigation projects or like ramparts or dams around. Maybe if there were any at the time Kepler wrote this thing. So
not that I'm aware of. Like, I mean, you of course always had the Netherlands, which basically built itself out of the sea.
Yeah,
When you
true.
look at its history, but no, not that I'm aware of. Like the idea of the Martian canals, though, was very much inspired by like the construction of the Suez Canal.
True.
Which was happening around the same time. So they, of course, like thought, hey, if we are building like these giant canals from ocean to ocean, maybe the Martians are doing the same.
Like of projection right there.
Yeah, of course. Like almost everything that has ever been written about alien life is projection. There's like very few exceptions. Like, for example, I believe like Wayne Barrow's expedition is like one of those few examples where someone genuinely tried making something that is not in any way meant to be like a reflection of humanity.
True. I mean, it was a bit inspired in part by the ecological movement, which was in full force at the time.
That is true, yeah. But like the aliens themselves, I mean,
yes.
Like their psychology and stuff is like very completely alien.
Yes, in that respect, it's true.
Yeah. So Solaris is also another example of like a genuinely alien entity in fiction.
I think a lot of things written by the author who wrote Solaris, Stanislav Lem. He has a book called Eden, in which there's like this extremely alien world, so weird that like I just go back at it and read it just for the descriptions. Sometimes there are factories that create living creatures, and there are also defective creatures. But of course, that could also be maybe a little like a jab at capitalism, as seen from the other side of the Iron Curtain. I don't know, but
there is like some sentence in Solaris that also paints the whole story as like being a jab at colonialism. And how like science can sometimes perpetuate those evils, like because the scientists in Solaris, they come to this planet and try to understand everything about this living ocean. And
Like whole, like what you study, you destroy
Yeah,
idea.
basically.
I guess so. I mean, truth be told, I read Solaris in Turkish years ago. It wasn't a great translation. I need to go back and find an English language copy, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So going back on Kepler's travels, like
Yeah.
how does the story end? Like,
I
is he
think
whisked back?
before
Or
we come back to that, I want, like, there is some interesting stuff about the Lunarians that we should still talk about, which, because it relates to what you said at the beginning, that this might be like the beginnings of like speculative evolution. Because about the nature of
yep.
the Lunarians, like Kepler says, for example, many of them have like a thick or spongy crust that, like, during the daytime it like dries up and like becomes brittle and then falls off. So that's like a very bizarre adaptation to these like harsh climatic conditions. And then Kepler says, like, die Tiergattung der Schlangen herrscht ganz allgemein vor, which means that snake-like beings, so reptilian creatures, are like the dominant life form on the moon, which I believe has. And he directly, in his notes, he directly bases that off the fact that, like, in hot climate regions on Earth, there's mostly like snakes and crocodiles. And he also read like reports about people from Africa who apparently, like, it's a very funny, like he says, apparently people in the south enjoy lying in the sun. I cannot imagine that for us Europeans. That's literally what he writes. It's very fun. So, like,
well, who knew a few hundred years later people would like pay to get on airplanes and go to different countries and lie down under the sun.
Yeah, I mean, back in the Middle Ages, like, a pale skin was seen as like a sign of nobility, because the peasants were the ones working outside in the field and getting a tan.
You didn't get, I guess now the equation is reversed, but the meaning is the same. It's the ability to just hang around and do your own thing.
I believe in East Asia, it is still very similar to that like pale skin is seen as a sign of beauty.
Yeah. And like also like ethereal beauty, and I don't know.
Well, yeah, what I wanted to get at is that, like, Kepler, similar to Bruno, makes like very interesting observations based on life on Earth. Like, he sees like most of the moon will be a desert environment, but does well on deserts on Earth. Reptiles, therefore, life on the moon probably would look reptilian, which I mean is very
paradise.
Yeah, basically. And it's like very similar to how people in like speculative evolution think about stuff. Oh, I have this environment, I need these and that adaptations.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
Which also I guess shows that he had like a good understanding of zoology as far as it went in that time.
Yes, I believe so. And like one last weird note that makes stuff like this truly alien. Apparently there's a very common plant on the moon that looks like a pine cone. And I believe during the night it like opens itself, and out of the seeds spring all the other animals. So the animals derived from plants. And he bases this off of actual accounts from Earth. Like there was all sorts of folklore creatures and stuff.
They used to think barnacles gave birth to actual seabirds for a while.
Not maybe, yeah, but like
goose barnacles.
Yeah, I mean there is like it was more like certain plants gave rise to certain insects and also birds. Like there was said to be in Scotland a tree where the fruit first like the duck ass grows out, and then the wings and stuff, and like the beak is like the last thing to disconnect, and then it lives on as like a normal goose.
That's like legit. Wish I had read that part before making my drawing. Yeah, it makes probably update it now.
Makes it so interesting to think like, I mean, there is life on Earth that technically functions similar. Like many plants do have like alternating, like many plants and fungi do have alternating generations, where like the haploid life stage looks different from the diploid one. You don't really see that in animals, but at least some insects do play around with like haploid and diploid genomes. So who knows? Maybe
I
you
don't know.
could have
I don't.
animals
Yeah.
with alternating generations.
I mean, I think certain parasitic insects like gall wasps are certainly on the way to evolving into such things. Like they're integrating, those little wasps that infect a plant, and then the eggs develop in tumor-like growths in the plant. I mean, it's only a matter of time before some adapt like that, like the fly, and then the insect and the plant evolve a kind of symbiosis. I mean, you could already say that most insects are so specialized in their relationships with plants that there's a kind of moth for almost every plant out there. So they're not genetically interlinked, but I mean, let's just say that they kind of add on to each other like Lego bits.
They're like not a super organism, but still like a compartment organism, you could say.
Yep. But of course, it's like a great visual image to have this like gigantic aloe vera type of pine cone-like plant, and in the day it cracks open and all the lizards come out, all the skinks, and maybe the top layers house the flying ones. I don't know. It's just wonderful to think about.
Yeah. So, and after like this like description, the story ends very abruptly with Kepler like waking up from his dream inside his bed. And you first think, oh, it was just a dream, but then he discovers like, remember when he sat down in the forest and like wrapped the towel around his head so he could see the like he wakes up and the towel is still around his head, and that's how the story ends.
Was it a dream or was it not?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
kind of 1990s movie kind of ending.
Yeah, the end question mark.
Or like Inception with the rotating thing top or kind of something like that. Oh well, I mean, it was a great show. I think we spoke for an hour or a half.
That could be it, yeah. But what I want to say is like I feel like this is like a lost genre, like Renaissance sci-fi, where you mix the very scientific, like the astronomical observations with like also like supernatural beliefs. So instead of like being wholly science or wholly religious, it's like something in between, and it's just it's just something very fun that I feel like people could do way more with nowadays. I mean, of course, you still have like supernatural elements and stuff like Star Wars, but
well, I think two points to add here. I think there's another author, Emanuel Swedenborg. I mean, he was basically he wrote a lot about ethics, but one of his books is about basically life on other worlds, and it's just similar to Kepler's journey, but it's like far more extensive, and like it's like in this universe the spirits are connected more intimately with people's lives, and I guess he wasn't trying to avoid critiques, so he just wrote it like in a more open-ended way.
Yeah, like Swedenborg believed he was a prophet of God, basically.
Yeah.
Like he was starting a religious movement, which one of the basic tenets was that the other planets are not just like populated with alien life, but other humans. So like humans, like not like the Star Trek humans, but like actual like you and me. Because
I read the book about alien life that he wrote, and some of them actually are like Star Trek humans. They just say in this one world, the men have like a sort of dark skin, but their nose is white, or like in this other world, the women have yellowish skin, or so. It's like basically Star Trek worlds. Like, but I always find that fascinating too. So it's only 100 years after, 100 years after Levania, right?
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah, like he was writing around the 1700s. Yeah, that is about a century later.
Yeah, and also like a second point to add here is that in this day and age, especially in the United States, there are a lot of people who combine these like personal spirit visions with like dream entities. sometimes it kind of segs into like experiments with DMT or LSD, or like, I mean, I appeared in I had an interview with like a fellow YouTuber last month. I mean, he's a genuinely nice guy, and his whole like worldview was all related with these like not only alien abductions but also visits by beings which might be spirit beings or beings from another plane or direct aliens. But there's like rich, dare I say, folklore of such very similar belief in the modern day and age. But I guess it's not in as quote unquote high layers of fiction. So maybe there's an instinctive narrative being fulfilled there. I don't know.
Yeah, there is like a that is definitely like a trend in ufology, that from these like purely scientific alien creatures you go into like these angelic archetypes. Like,
yeah.
like what was his name? George Adamski.
Yeah.
Like
Adamski.
when he says like he like, and I like this, I have to go on a bit on a tangent, but like I was scrolling through Netflix and I looked up this like one UFO documentary, UFOs Declassified. It's not a good documentary. There's way better ones. Like this one is like very biased and stuff. Because like at one point they said this was the spot where George Dempsey claims to have met an alien from Venus, and then they like narrate over that and stuff, and I'm like, wait, Venus? Alien from Venus, the planet where it is hot enough to melt lead.
Yeah, but I think Adamski like specifically claimed they were from Venus. What, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. That's the funny part about Adamski. Like he claimed that he met aliens from like human aliens from like Venus and Mars and like the back of the moon, and then like only a few decades later, like NASA showed there can't be anything human-like on those planets with those conditions.
Well, maybe they live in pine cones or under the ground, or
underground
pine cones. Who knows?
Yeah, but like honestly, reading those accounts, I had just had such a good laugh because like the comedic timing was so good. Like he claims he was on a spaceship and like saw the far side of the moon, and there he saw like cities and trees and stuff, and like only like 5 years or so later, like the first Soviet satellites like photographed the far side of the moon and say it's just great.
Parched hellscape.
Yeah,
I always thought that like after World War I, there was a big rise in belief in spirit science or like ectoplasm manifestations, things like this. And I always thought, like, especially Adamski's visions were like, maybe there could have been a trauma response to World War II, and I mean, what he lost there, or
I wanted to get to that. Like, I have a like more cynical idea, because the idea you get from most of these accounts is like, look, I met these aliens from other planets. On their planets, they have solved all their problems. They have solved like
their world peace,
world peace and stuff. And yeah, if you like support me, if you buy my books and stuff, maybe I can like keep my contacts myself and my contacts running long enough that I can unlock these secrets from these aliens. You know, it kind of like is like, I mean, you know, it sounds bad, but it's kind of like a scam.
Yeah, I mean, this whole area, like European trauma after World War II, it's like a very prickly issue because of the nature of the regime that was vanquished. But I always sensed there was a connection there. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong, but
yeah. But yeah, that is the general thing, that, you know, like connecting like the alien with the religious is, it says a lot about like human psychology.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? If we have another world war, maybe something like this could begin again, but maybe it will be in the shape of, I don't know, trans-dimensional, or it could be like those lizard people, but good and benevolent this time. It could be like those like
the Warhammer lizard man.
Utopian
we went
skinks.
full circle because they are actually like order aligned in the Warhammer universe.
Yeah, they look like nice guys. They don't look evil. I mean, from what I've been able to see.
Yeah, like their purpose is to fight chaos and like protect the younger races. But the problem is they have like very robotic minds. So sometimes it's like, you know, like you have to argue with a robot whose task is to protect you, but it does it in a way that is not convenient for you.
Well, anyways, based in the least, to say the least. All right. So it has been, I think, over an hour and a half. And shall we call it a day? We will continue with these podcasts. I mean, next episode, we'll think about something else.
Yeah, I want to talk about ufology, honestly.
All right, so it's set. The next show will be a ufology centered podcast episode.
And Warhammer.
Did you lose me there for a second? Okay, Warhammer, ufology, and Monty Python. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. This was me speaking with TK Sivgin. If you enjoyed this show, please subscribe to this channel. Also, please consider supporting TK Sivgin on Patreon. And I think you got some nice projects to announce to our listeners as well.
Yeah, just today I launched this new site called Hardeshur, which, I mean, you could also simply call the project a slightly more habitable Mars. So it's like speculative evolution about the Mars as it was imagined in like the 1950s.
Nice. And the link is in the video description as well. So please give Hardeshur a visit. TK is very busy also writing for Rinia, which is the space station with different biomes we spoke about earlier. So all of these are in the video description. Please, if you like them, give them a read, and please consider supporting TK Sivgin on Patreon as well. All right.
That was support memo, please.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I won't include my link in this video description, but if you look for CM Kozaman in Patreon, you also get a chance to give me a dime as well. Anyways, that was really nice. Thank you so much, my friend.
I have to thank you. It's always nice talking with you.
All right. So stopping the recording in 3, 2.